Welcome to the Almost Perfect Podcast, a celebration of fuck-ups, failures, and falling flat on your face. This is a podcast that believes you can learn from experience, but that experience doesn't have to be your own. Hi, I'm Bob Perfect. I'm a functional fuck-up. Let's learn from somebody else's mistakes. And today we are learning from Candice Chirwa. Now, Candice is the Minister of Menstruation, which is not an official government position, but she does seem to do a lot more work than our government officials do. So yeah, Candice is an activist who works with menstrual health and period poverty, and is someone who I've been following for a while since I met her in Joburg at Wayne Lean's one gig. I was rolling with Mojack, and yeah, he introduced me to Candice, and she introduced herself as the Minister of Menstruation. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna put you on the list, like, for sure. And then yeah, following her and seeing the work that she does with her NGO QRATE has been pretty inspiring, to be honest with you. Like, it's cool to see someone actually utilizing social media for good and not just to get clout, I guess. So yeah, we chat about that actually. We chat a lot about utilizing social media and the effects of it, and just a whole journey of becoming this character, I guess, of the Minister of Menstruation. And yeah, we obviously discuss a lot about periods, a lot about menstruation, and I think it's quite informative for, you know, people who don't menstruate especially. But I'm sure there's stuff that other people can relate to, and I'm sure, yeah, if you menstruate, a lot of this will probably, you know, just feel familiar. And yeah, I just think maybe more people can give Candice a bit of a boost. You can follow her on social media. You can check out the work she does. I think it's really important. And yeah, really, I personally learned quite a bit from this conversation, and I'm really looking forward to you hearing it. Before we do get into that chat, I do need to let you know that this podcast is brought to you by you. It is entirely listener supported. There's no advertising. That might change one day, but I'm not a fan of advertising. I prefer this whole model of, you know, if you like a thing, pay for the thing. And also, if you can't afford it or whatever the reasoning, hey, you don't have to either. You can get it for free. But if you do want to support it, patreon.com/almostperfect. There's a few different tiers there. And yeah, you can subscribe for as little as $1 a month, or you can go all the way up to $10. And trust me, it really, really does help a lot, especially when, you know, a lot of the software that I use, like a software as service, and so you got to pay monthly subscriptions, and they're in dollars, and the rand-dollar exchange rate is not good. So the costs have been steadily rising. So yeah, if you enjoy this, if you've been enjoying digging into the catalog, if you've been a supporter for a while, I would appreciate it. As I say, just as little as $1 a month. And yeah, it can really, really help go a long way. It can also help me promote these things online and get them heard by more people. Anyway, I feel like that was enough shilling, but a boy's got a shill. A boy's got a shill. Oh man, yeah, it's been obviously quite a hectic time in the world lately. I think we all know this. I think also if you listened to my podcast last week, you'd know where I stand on everything. And even if you follow me on social media, which a lot fewer people do at the moment. Because yeah, obviously I am pro-Palestine, and yeah, do believe in Palestinian liberation. Obviously, there's so much within all of this that people are discussing in that. And all I would say is just try and get your news from reputable sources, but even at the moment, that's really difficult to determine. You know, you've got mainstream media outlets and these massive media outlets basically towing a line that is, to me at least, and to I think a lot of people, enabling genocide. And so I don't know, man. Personally, I'm an Al Jazeera guy. Like, that's where I get a lot of my news on all of this. And I mean this for like whatever your viewpoint is. Like, you gotta realize there's a lot of, yeah, just emotional language being used, a lot of manipulative language being used, and, you know, a lot of stuff's being reported without necessarily being verified. And even afterwards, you know, there's a lot of we just live in a propaganda age, you know? So I think just try and think a bit critically is all I'm going to say here. And then lastly, before we get into the podcast, I do just want to remind you that we have the Not Quite Right open mic every Wednesday at Ace's Pizza in Durban. It's at 247 Windermere Road. 30 Rand gets you in. It starts around 7:30. And this week's host is Carmony, who is really one of my favorite comedians in Durban. I remember seeing her ages ago, about a year ago, when I did an open mic. And fuck, she's developed so well. And I'm so excited for more people to see her. So come on through to that. And with that out the way, it is now time for the Almost Perfect Podcast with Candice Chirwa. So how are you living, Candice?
I'm living okay. Trying to survive in Cyril's economy is an extreme sport. I don't know if there are game developers that listen to your podcast, but it would be nice to create a game called Surviving Cyril's Economy, where it's not like a zombie apocalypse, but it's kind of like, trying to figure stuff out, you're just trying
that would be like a Sims mod.
Sims mod, pretty much. Just trying to weigh up the cost of do I get eggs, which are not easily available at the moment? Do I get chicken, which is also currently not available at the moment? Things like that. Just trying to figure out life. But I'm okay. I'm hanging in there. I'm just trying to take it one day at a time. I'm okay.
Yeah, I feel you. My egg strategy at the moment is like, I don't know, you can't stock up on eggs. That's the thing, because they do go off. So it's like I can only get like 18 at a time reasonably. And yeah, I've definitely been feeling that egg dilemma at the moment. Instead of having 2 every morning, I'm having 1. I'm just like
it's tough times. Who would have thought that? Would you consider yourself a millennial? I don't know.
Yeah, I am. I'm 36. I'm 100% a millennial.
Who would have considered millennials who are, I guess, I don't know what sort of considered what are the main, I don't know, adjectives of the millennial generation. But who would have thought that we would be living through tough times lasting, also living through social media getting us through these tough times, but then just also trying to make a sense of the world. It's a really interesting time. I think I saw a tweet the other day where someone was just like, I'm just a girl, just trying to survive this economic, financial time, but also trying to understand how we've just survived a pandemic and we're also just currently living and dealing with it. That's just, it's a crazy time. It's a really crazy time. And I low-key want us to do life orientation for not preparing us on how to adult properly, because all we ever learned was peer pressure and bullying and don't get pregnant. Yeah.
I didn't even have LO. I'm that old that it came in. Yeah, I think LO was for the grades just below me. So I don't know. For me personally, I kind of did see all of this coming because I read a lot of dystopian sci-fi growing up. So I was like, yeah, there's nothing good coming down the pipeline. No one ever wrote about the future going, it's going to be good. So I've always had that philosophy of just yo, just deal with whatever comes your way. And personally, yeah, I'm just I'm interested to see how the story plays out.
Mm. And also, it's very dystopian when you have old people running the current affairs of pretty much in Africa, where you have a youth boom, where majority of populations in African nations are young people, and yet we're seeing old people lead and establish policies that will ultimately impact our future and generations' futures. And it's frustrating, right? Because they're okay, these policies are so out of touch because we have people who don't necessarily not necessarily look, but don't represent us. They don't understand our current problems. They don't understand what we are worried about for the future, because they're just well, I'm always close to kicking the bucket. Let me just do what I need to do, show face, and then we keep it moving. It's a very scary time that we live in. And I think beyond just being a menstrual activist, I'm always just trying to encourage young people to see beyond just the despondency that we currently feel, right? A lot of
Yeah.
the time when we speak to like South African youth who are, well, I mean, for the international audience who are listening to the podcast, we have elections coming up next year, same time as the American election cycle. So that's going to be a really interesting time. But every time you speak to South African youth and you ask them like, so who are you going to vote for? Like, what do you feel
Everyone's like,
about?
there's no one.
There's no one. Yeah, people are just like, there's no one. And I don't know if it's a thing of we've just gotten very despondent and we've just fallen into this trap of like, oh, well, the ruling party will always win. So what's the point? It's like, well, the point is realizing that we all have some form of role and responsibility in just how we view South African politics and how we shape the future of our country. And yeah, I just think like we need to step up. We need to do something different. But that's besides the point. I feel like there's much more we speak about on this podcast. And yeah.
No, I mean, it's a part of what you do. Like, you do want to inspire the youth. You do want to have an impact and a positive impact on the world around you. Like, I know Gandhi is a problematic figure for many reasons. But his whole
Yes.
thing, yeah, sheesh. But like his whole thing of, be the change you want to see in the world is a good motto, I think, for anyone to have. And it does seem that like that's, that's a guiding principle for you.
Definitely. I think for me, so just to like sort of put background into the work that I do, I've always been very passionate about human rights, in particular like gender rights or gender studies. I study, well, I'm currently doing my PhD with gender studies at Wits, but I think for me,
How do you find the time with everything else? That's crazy.
I don't know. I like the many hats that I wear, and in particular because I often find myself very busy. I like that I can always be in sync with like what my energy and time dictates to me. So sometimes there's times when I really want to just be on the ground, do a workshop, or sometimes there's times when I just want to be away and read and research and write. And I love the duality of my work in which I can do both. But I think for me, when I came across period poverty for the first time, it was something where I was like, okay, as someone who menstruates and had a very, I guess, isolating time for my first period, a very scary first period, it was weird in which the cycle of silence was still continuing because I started my period at the age of 10 and then I came across, period poverty around age 21. And I just felt the need to talk openly about it. And I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know if it was like maybe getting a protest, but I was just like, well, I have social media. And I guess social media is a way in which I can articulate and use it as a platform where I can air out my grievances and use it as a way to just talk about something. And that's pretty much what I did, right? Beyond just like the other things of like, okay, working at the United Nations and doing my master's on it. I think social media for me has
Casual flex.
casual, very casual. Um, I think, yeah, it's social media has been very vital in cultivating who the Minister of Menstruation is, in establishing a platform, a safe platform for people, non-menstruators and menstruators, to speak openly about our periods, because period stigma is a thing that has been, I don't know, sort of cultivated for centuries and centuries and centuries.
Yep.
And so the thing of like now we are in this decade where we can speak about periods openly and still feel some form of resistance, but at least there's an allyship where people are like, no, it's time. We need to shift the narrative. So yeah, I think for me, I just decided that I couldn't accept the status quo when it came to what I was seeing surrounding how girls in particular felt when their first period came. And I felt that something needed to change with regards to period education and how we're speaking about it and the dismantling of that stigma. So yeah, that's a little bit of a history of how I came to be the Minister of Menstruation. And I guess for people listening, I'd want them to realize that if there's something that's really upsetting you, like even if it's as simple as load shedding and the traffic lights down your road and they're never working, you have the ability to change the status quo. Like, don't ever underestimate the power and the impact that you as an individual can create, and especially in creating a movement and starting something. So yeah, I think that for me is what the Minister of Menstruation is all about.
I feel you there. I wish I was like less jaded because I have that spark in me to like want to change things, but then I'm also like, what's the fucking point? But that's my own battle that like I'll deal with.
But
At another
don't you
time.
think your podcast is that? Don't you think Almost Perfect is that platform in which,
Yeah,
yeah?
yeah, to some degree. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
I've done a lot of different things to impact the world in ways that I see as beneficial in that. But I don't know, I've got conflicting views about media and the image and all of this that's been fostered by too much like reading of 70s French philosophers, you know? So I don't know, I've got like a lot of weird conflicting thoughts. We can probably chat about the social media stuff, but let's actually just, yeah, chat about period poverty. What do you mean by that term? Because I think maybe, I assume a lot of people who are listening kind of understand or have an understanding, but what does that mean?
So, it's interesting. I think I always try my best to like not use the technical definition of it, but also try and make it as relatable. And I think all of us use toilet paper, right? Like I hope all of us use toilet paper. Unless you fall within the 1% of that category where your toilet paper is like gold and has like a logo
I
on
mean, I
it.
think
I
some
don't
people
know.
have bidets, but I get you.
You know what I'm saying? But toilet paper is an essential item. And I think without it, people tend to get very distressed in terms of what other alternative means they could use if they don't have access to toilet paper, especially in the management of a biological function being, your urine or your the other things that
Something you have no control over, yeah.
yes, number one and number two, right? So when we then sort of look at that sort of element and link it to our periods, it's the same principle in that we have these products, whether it be a pad, a tampon, a menstrual cup, a period underwear, or any other reusables, and ultimately not having access to these products as a way to manage a natural and biological function will lead to a set of social and economic implications. And right now, period poverty is often looked at from the lens of the impact that the lack of access to period products has on one girl's child's education or schooling. But it's much deeper than just access to education. I think when we look at period poverty, especially when someone leaves the school setting, it still exists and persists in if you come from a household where you're living on a grant and you have to debate whether you're putting food on the table or an essential item. That is something that still persists in a lot of households and societies, not in just Africa, but all over the world. And I think what is really important for people to understand is that outside of just the access to period products, we're also looking at, the access to infrastructure. Do we have access to water? Do we have access to disposable facilities? And beyond that, do we have access to medical care that is affirming and empowering and isn't full of stigma? And this is why when we look at these conversations around period poverty, a lot of people often think it should be so simple to solve by just making period products free. Like maybe solves partially the
But
problem,
then
but we
how do you get them to the people who need them?
exactly. And if we are going to then be understanding that menstruation is a complex and multifaceted biological function that the symptoms are different for other people. And also, when we consider that there are people who menstruate that are disabled, the problems are very different to just an able-bodied person. So, an able-bodied person might say, "Okay, my concern is I can't have access to pads, I don't have access to water." And then once we fix those problems, that's fine. But when we look into a different segment of menstruators who are disabled, who don't identify as women and girls and don't look like women and girls and still menstruate. These are things that then show that the issue around period poverty is much deeper than just the access to pads and making sure that a girl child goes to school. And I think with being a menstrual health activist from the South, and also being an academic in the space, I always question why we're always seeing period poverty to be associated as an African problem, when in fact it isn't. We see that there are a lot of companies currently in America trying to lobby for the removal of tampon tax, especially because there are lower and middle class individuals who menstruate that can't afford these period products. And that has major socioeconomic issues. The same thing in the United Kingdom, in Scotland, and in a lot of European countries where people are saying that the lack of access, or the inaccessibility of these period products causes a wave of human rights implications. So, yeah, I think people need to understand that period poverty is a human rights issue. And it really stems from just, speaking to the nearest person that who menstruates, and asking them, like, okay, what issues do you go through on a month-to-month basis besides the symptoms that you experience? Like, what are you experiencing in the office? What type of stigma and taboo that do you face? What type of discrimination do
What
you
about
face?
in sex life? Like,
Things like that. And yeah, it's a wide range of issues that I think a lot of people need to be speaking openly about. And that's why I'm really passionate as a menstrual health activist, because outside of the fact that, yes, in South Africa, I'm lobbying for policy to be implemented around a menstrual health rights bill, I'm also trying to say to people that this isn't just a poverty issue. This can impact anyone from a stigma and discrimination point of view. The fact that I, as Candice Chirwa, can still be discriminated because I am a menstruator and I bleed is something that we still need to talk about. So there's an educational element that is also lacking in these conversations. But yeah, I'm going to leave it there for now. I don't want to, waffle on too long.
Well, I mean, no, like, share, please. And like, what I'm kind of picking up from all of this is a lot of what this is because of the way society's been structured through patriarchal and capitalist, frameworks, basically, that doctors of old were men, and so they didn't really understand or care as much about the care of women. And now, like, because of capitalism, these are products that are both taxed, and also it's not, these are companies that are also making profits off of it. I saw today you posted one of the companies is doing reusable underwear, and I found that interesting because, that almost goes against their profit margins. It almost goes against the capitalist idea that, a company always has to grow and constantly be making money. Whereas now, if you're selling a product that's reusable, I'm assuming, there's less incentive almost, within the current structures. And I know that's like, I don't know, maybe a bit esoteric, but how much of that sort of stuff do you think about and deal with, in terms of your studies? And then also, how does it impact things on the ground, I guess?
Yeah. It's, I don't know. I think for the past month or two. So is it Twitter? Do we call it Twitter? Do we call it X? I don't know.
So I've got a joke about it, basically, that, when Elon Musk starts treating trans people properly, that's when I'll call Twitter X.
Okay, love it. Love that. And that is a tweet. That is a tweet, actually. So, I don't know, for the past couple of months, I've been on the receiving end of a lot of, like, menstrual stigma. I guess because, you have a platform called the Minister of Menstruation. People are easy
And
to
I
just, like,
guess it's getting bigger and bigger.
Fair, also that. So the other day, what was really interesting is that some individual made a tweet to say, we don't really need to know when you're on your period. Like, calm down. We don't need to know. And in that moment, I was like, you know what? I could choose to not respond, but I feel like I should. And I think what I loved about my response about in regards to that tweet was that a lot of international people were responding positively towards who the Minister of Menstruation is and what she advocates for. But what I also appreciated about it is that my platform has gotten to a point where if I tweet something about stigma or share a story about something that's happening, a lot of people respond more positively than negatively. And I'm very mindful that Twitter/X is only a small percentage of, our society, but it shows that we're heading in the right direction, right? And I think for me, this year has been a really interesting year of experiencing the stigma direct. I won't lie, there was a podcast that I went on earlier this year. Very popular blonde individual who goes by the name of I don't know, I don't want to do 30 seconds, but it's not difficult to know. And within the first 2 minutes of me speaking, he just shut me down because of the terminology that I used of women, girls, and people who menstruate. And
Yeah,
he
but
felt
he's a fucking whatever. Sorry.
he felt the need to discredit and invalidate menstruators' lived experiences. I'm like, I, as a menstrual health activist, cannot be disingenuous and sit on a platform and just completely cut out a segment of menstruators because it doesn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense. And yet all of the comments in that chat were pretty much discrediting me, invalidating me,
But that's his
making me feel like,
audience. They're
making me
like
feel
against the woke, you know?
like, yeah, making me feel like I don't know what I'm saying or don't know what I'm doing. Mind you, I'm like doing my whole PhD in this. I definitely know what I'm saying. I definitely know what I'm doing. And I think this year has just been the year of like dealing directly with the stigma, but knowing exactly that I don't want to be disrailed or derailed by, I don't know what we call it. What we call menstrual haters? There should be a term for menstrual haters, but I just we'll have to think about it. I always feel that my purpose as an activist isn't for me to prove something individually. It's for me to lobby and advocate for so many people who don't necessarily have the access to the podcast, the platforms that I do, and also make them feel seen and heard, and also speak truth to their issues, especially these issues that are often deemed as invisible. And yeah, there's no way I don't know if I should call it we need to think of a term of a menstrual hater. If people have a specific term, please come up with it. But there's no way that I'm going to have people continuously perpetuate the stigma, especially when we know the facts. We know the facts. We know what the truth is. And yeah, so sometimes it can get to me mentally and emotionally, but I always put my own feelings aside and say, this isn't for me. This is for a generation of people who menstruate that I want to sort of leave a legacy behind to say that the first time you menstruate, it'll be met with celebration and not with fear. The first time you speak openly about your period, you're not going to be worried about how some boot fighter is going to respond to you. They're going to literally be like, okay, I understand. Like this
Here's a
is
tampon.
yeah, the tampon. What do you need? Like, what can I do to help? And I guess this speaks to a deeper issue that I've recently shared upon on my LinkedIn. I've become that girl now. I'm sharing insights on LinkedIn.
Hey, there's an audience there. Like,
There is an audience, and I love it. Everyone's so encouraging, which is so great. But also, there's something about LinkedIn that I feel like celebrates hustle culture a little bit too much.
yeah,
That's another conversation.
I can't stand it personally, but like, hey, like if you can chat to people there,
Yeah, you have to announce good things on LinkedIn. You can't announce like the setbacks and the failures. But I guess
I mean, there's no way you can announce the setbacks and failures anymore. Like, I think all of social media has become just this like silo of, the ideal life.
exactly. And yeah, I I've just decided to, convert that anxiety of whether I'm doing well to just be like, let me be productive on this platform and just share my thoughts. And yeah, I have a blog called Flowing Wisdom, no pun intended. And um, not recently, this past weekend, a friend of mine shared a period advert. And yeah, it shook me to its core because I was like, okay, here we go again. Another depiction of our periods being seen as this happy-go-lucky time where people are dancing, people are jumping out of a plane, can do anything, and it just upset me because it's like, okay, in as much as the confidence and the empowerment is undoubtedly essential, I feel that the lack of representation is dangerous in that if a young girl is constantly seeing the depiction of their period as happy, but they're feeling symptoms that don't make them happy, they feel like there's something wrong with them. And for me, I felt the need to just address this to advertisers to say, you have a role and responsibility to depict our periods in the right way, in a way that, yes, can sell your product very creatively, but can also make us feel seen and heard. And I think it's the time now that we address that, right?
I mean, growing up, like I didn't understand, pad adverts at all. I didn't know why they were pouring this liquid onto pads and like with the scientists and this and that. And like, I do agree with you. I think the media and marketing of a lot of these products leaves a lot to be desired.
And look, it just got me thinking in a totally different way. In that, I don't know if there is, because part of me is saying a lot of people think, okay, it's mostly men that did this, and I'm like, okay, probably, maybe. If we look at the Johnson and Johnson board in America, where majority of them are men, I don't know if that trickles down to here in South Africa, but I want to
Structurally,
believe,
it's probable.
probably, I want to believe and hope that part of these agencies and marketing teams are able to just have some form of representation at the table. Be like, okay, well, yes, we're all men, we don't menstruate, but do we perhaps need menstruators here to speak about it?
Do you see, this is the thing. The problem is like structural everywhere. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. And if they're not having these conversations, it's concerning. And I just felt the need to just share that, to say, stigma doesn't necessarily have to be a visceral thing. Like, it doesn't have to be explicit. Sometimes it can be as implicit as seeing blue liquid being poured into a pad, or seeing a menstruator wearing tight jeans when we know tight jeans are not feasible on our period. And just going and saying, well, what needs to be changed differently? And for me, that's why I'm very passionate about just saying, look, we need to change the status quo. We need to talk openly about these things. And yeah, something needs to change. Something needs to change. I don't know. I feel like,
It
I
seems
don't know.
like you are enacting that change. Like I think
Yeah.
it's cool to see, like, as I say, like I'm someone who's got like conflicting like emotions when it comes, and opinions and thoughts and whatever when it comes to social media. I see it as a wonderful, open platform that you can do anything with that you want to do, really, but it also only rewards certain things. And so I don't know, I think it's breaking people's brains, mine included. But I love that I think what I'm getting at is that with the character, I guess, of the Minister of Menstruation, you're able to take a step back and have a clear focus and a clear understanding and idea of what you're putting out and why you're putting it out there. And it's not,
Mm,
for yourself, I guess, like if that makes sense. And I think that's such a healthier way to deal with it. But like you say, you've been getting some blowback in that. And how do you feel with social media? Do you ever feel burnt out? Because you're like online a lot, you're sharing constantly. It
yeah.
must be quite daunting. It must be, it's quite a large responsibility.
Yeah, I think, well, look, let me be very honest. I think, in comparison to our other ministers, I don't think I'm doing a bad job. I think I'm doing okay. I think I'm doing okay. I think there comes
Yeah.
there comes an anxiety, though, of wondering whether you're either doing too much, especially with the work that I do, whether I'm speaking too much, or I'm not speaking enough, or I'm doing too much, or if I'm not doing enough at all. And I think that's just generally my anxiety about it. Imposter syndrome has a funny way of just being like, okay, so you did this blog post, people are going to hate you now. And it's like, well, I don't think so. I
Yep.
mean, I share my thoughts, I need to share my opinions, I'm entitled to that. And constantly having to like affirm myself and validate like everything that I go through and everything that I'm doing is very difficult, especially being in the nonprofit space when funds are very low. It's very tough, just having to constantly always affirm and saying what you're doing is for the greater good and it's for a good purpose, and especially putting that out on social media. And I think for me, I've gotten to a point now where I just want to be like the Steve Biko of my social media, where I just post what I like and I'm not being sort of dictated or being like governed by what is happening currently. Especially when it comes to the period conversation, I feel that there'll be things that'll be happening and there's a lot to respond to, but I want to be authentic and genuine in my response, and not necessarily feeling like I need to just do it as a way to be trendy or as a way to, I don't know, be relevant.
Yeah, to gain more followers, basically. Because I do see, like, in the comedy space, there are a lot of people who jump onto a lot of different uh, causes just to kind of boost their own profile. But obviously, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's what's different with you, and that's like why, like, that's the thing, all the things I hate about like social media, you manage to like actually like utilize to your benefit, I guess.
Yeah, and look, I also think it's very interesting trying to learn like what being a menstrual health activist and also like a thought leader looks like on a social media platform. I for one don't really I don't really know who to look. I don't know who to look to for the inspiration and the like the framework. But I also don't know whether if I'm doing the right thing, you know. Because at the end of the day, we have to be honest. Like there are a lot of opportunities I've gotten to do campaigns and do like like brand work, but I always have to look at the values and the the work that they want me to do. And it's often very difficult trying to like say, okay, beyond just being this person who has X amount of followers, I'm also someone who can be a strategist. I can think for you, I can consult for you. And people often don't want to take those conversations beyond just we want you to promote something, we want you to talk about something. And I've been in a very interesting space of trying to figure out how I can do both strategically, and that I can be the person that promotes and has people engage on a specific campaign, but I can also be behind the the strategy and the writing of that. Because often when it comes to like the period campaigns that I see, it's always just like
It's cringe.
it's always the same. Yeah, it's always the same thing, right? And I will applaud some brands that have definitely taken up the call to say, you know, let's push beyond just the here's promoting the product. Let's have these conversations. But I want it to be more than just like, okay, you can access this conversation on our YouTube. Why are we not seeing TVC ads of periods being depicted in a very representative way, right? And why are we not seeing there's a lot that I wish I could I
Yeah, I
could
mean,
do
I think that's very
better.
valid. Like, like also maybe, do the like you need to be promoting the YouTube like chats in your adverts, basically. Have an online portal that you're sending people to with the information. Like as a company that deals with those products, that to me makes the most sense. I don't know if that's happening, but like to me that would help.
I agree. I don't know. I think that's part of the frustration I've been feeling this year of saying that my contribution to the space could be better or could be bigger than just me being the Minister of Menstruation and sitting on a couch and just being in front of the screen. And I think I'm in a space now where I'm like, perhaps I have to put myself out there and say, look, beyond just being this Minister of Menstruation, I am someone who has the academic and technical experience of running an NGO, knowing what people want, and also knowing how to respond on social media and just trying to find something that works. And
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 also
I'm a,
underground experience. Like you've probably
ooh,
chatted to like thousands upon thousands of menstruators about their issues.
yeah, definitely. I mean, QRATE being the NGO and us doing the menstrual health workshops, we are able to spend at least an hour of our time directly with young people to speak about the experiences of menstrual health, but also to just give them that space of being heard and validated. So it's for me, it's just I guess it's just the humanitarian in me always wanting to do more and contribute greatly to the space. And I think I've just hit that space of like I want to do more, be it just beyond just being like this. I don't even want to call myself a social media influencer, but I want to
I
be
hate
able
that
to
term.
be a part of those campaigns and make sure that the messaging is coming across in a way that is validated and empowering for people that will see it. So yeah, I'm in a very interesting space with social media at the moment. And it's not like I'm going to just jump off the platforms. I think there is purpose behind my social media, but I just think that I need to rethink how I use it going forward and how it can be more beneficial other than just us complaining all the time. And actually converting that into change that we see, that we want to see.
I feel you there, and I do like I've been saying, like it is structural, and that's why you need to like kind of get into those spaces where decisions are made.
Mm,
Like
mm,
because I could see like people probably do see you as an influencer and treat you as one. In that like you were saying, they come to you with a campaign, and like you have to go I don't know if I like this. And then they're like,
Mm,
well, this is the campaign. Like,
mm,
it's,
mm.
yeah,
Yeah,
so I see those issues. One thing I wanted to bring up, because I know you chat to young girls and to other young menstruators, and I was wondering though, how much do you challenge, well, not challenge, but chat to parents and try and educate parents? Because I feel like a lot of the stigma and stuff can start at home.
yeah, definitely. We've experienced a lot of a lot of the stigma that the young menstruators in our workshops will speak on is from the generational conversations they're having either between parents, guardians, or people that they trust in their lives. And we find ourselves in a space where we're like, okay, well, considering that we predominantly deal with young menstruators, how do we then pivot curate to a way that we can be able to access these parents and be able to access teachers? And we often, usually when we're at schools, we make the invitation to the teachers to say, please come into these sessions and spend time. It's not like the students are going to see you any different after, the session. You're still the teacher. But I think it establishes a really great safe space in that if anything had to happen when we leave, they can rely on you as a teacher, as a facilitator, as a guardian. And that's really important. But with parents, what we find to be very interesting is that parents are willing to engage, but oftentimes their stigma will be based on what religion or culture has told them, in
Sure.
particular through the usage of tampons and menstrual cups, because there's this whole policing of,
Virginity.
virginity. And having those conversations have been a very difficult conversation with parents because they truly believe that the usage of these products will break their children's virginity. And, it's difficult just having to state the facts of saying, okay, if we look at what virginity is, i.e., a social construct, and we look at the hymen and exactly where the hymen is placed, and that the hymen being a thin elastic layer that sort of covers the opening of the vaginal canal, literally will shrink by the time the menstruator has reached menstruating, because menstruation is the last stage of puberty. The hymen has pretty much not necessarily disappeared, but disappeared, right? So using a tampon or a menstrual cup won't break their hymen, and it won't break their virginity, because virginity being a social construct in terms of sex, two totally different things. And we always tell the young people that you're not having sex with these products. It's a way to manage your period blood. And it's very difficult for them to just have that confidence and empowerment and then tell their parents the same way. So we're trying to find a way in which we can still be accessible through our workshops, but also be accessible through like digital content that parents can easily access if they want to learn more about these things. And yeah, we're trying to think of different ways and trying to be innovative and think about how this content looks like. But for me, I've always thought about the fact that if QRATE isn't as accessible, if we're only just based on Gauteng and someone in, let's say, Ghana wants access to our content, how do they get an access to that? And for me, that's something that I've just been in a space of thinking about. How do we innovate and how do we pivot to ensure that parents, teachers, facilitators, and guardians don't always just need to rely on us within the workshops, but can have access to that content? So, yeah. It's really interesting conversations that we had. I know you wanted to bring something up about the tampon
Well, it's just
and
like
menstrual
with
cup gate.
religious stuff, basically, like it is tricky, because definitions are different to like
Mm,
scientific things, and it is more of a social construct, and it is more of an idea a lot of the time. And like, yeah, I was basically thinking maybe chatting to like religious leaders as well might be a way to, finding allies, because there are, religious leaders who do take a science-based approach as well.
yeah.
And like, there's various ways I think to approach that. But I mean, I've been in the church when I was younger and stuff, and like I was, like I had a lot of whack ideas that were put in my brain by people who, had good intentions but just didn't necessarily know better. And I think
Mm,
that's like a challenge you're facing.
yeah. I mean, as someone who went to a private Catholic school, you can imagine, like, I always just think, I wonder what my former teachers think when they see me on TV or listen to me on radio and they're like, I know this girl and she's talking about periods, especially considering what the Old Testament has to say about periods. It's
Yeah, that it's
totally,
punishment for
yeah, yeah.
the original sin.
Eve brought periods to us. Okay, that's what they say. But it's so interesting. I just think like having to just break beyond that boundary and just again realizing that my purpose is really about establishing a period positive world, and that's beyond me. And I always just go and think like, okay, I know 10-year-old Candice would have benefited a lot if there was a Minister of Menstruation, or if I had access to a QRATE workshop when I started my period. I would have had a totally different relationship with my body and my periods for those 11 years that I viewed myself in such a negative way. And so I think that's why I'm always just like, the work cannot stop. And I'm always just set on wanting to scale up and make sure that our messaging goes beyond just like us doing the workshops, and it goes beyond just me being a social media person, a thought leader. I want it to be I want it to be sustainable. I want it to be impactful. I want it to be a thing that if God forbid anything had to happen to me today, we know that the script will always be that period adverts from now on always have to be inclusive. If anything had to happen to me today, I know that that the educational element around comprehensive sexuality education, inclusive of menstrual health, is something that's affirming and empowering and educational. And that's what I'm pushing for, outside of just the access to period products, because there are a lot of organizations that are pushing for that, and that is really great. But we need to be more sustainable in saying, how do we create that norm shift? How do we ensure that we're no longer seeing periods in such a negative light, that we're no longer having these negative connotations around a tampon and periods, or when a girl starts a period at a very early age, it's because she misbehaved. No, we need to remove ourselves from those things. And yeah, I'm really passionate about ensuring that happens.
Yeah, well, I'm just, when you say all of this, I'm just thinking of like comedy's like negative effects on it. Like comedies have a negative effect on so many things, but like just from, TV shows, sitcoms to stand-up comedy to jokes people tell around like at school, basically, like periods have definitely been cast in such a fucked up light by men and women as well, like, in their comedy and that. And it's like, I think, yeah, that's also a thing people need to just maybe think about how their art engages with these sorts of topics. Like that's just a thing for myself. Like I'm just trying to think like about like how I could talk about these things in a positive way. It would probably be about period sex, but like,
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting one. Like, I feel that people view period sex in such a negative light purely because of what it will do to the man and his eggplant. And it's like, okay, firstly, let's
whatever. We've all got showers. Like
yeah, that
when we don't all.
but also understand what the components of menstrual blood are. Like, it is the uterine lining shedding itself, and it's the same uterine lining that would ultimately be the home for a baby, right? A baby would grow there. And so you wouldn't want a uterine lining that is dirty, or uterine lining that is not healthy for the menstruator. And I think people always just assume that because it's coming out of the vagina, it's dirty. It's like, okay, no, it's not dirty. I'll assure you it's not
So
dirty.
self-cleaning
It's
thing. Like
self-cleaning machine. It sets its own pH balance. And yeah, what people need to really understand is that there's a lot of education that's needed around the reproductive system.
100%.
Yeah, menstrual blood has different components of the uterine lining, which is the blood. You also have the what is the word? Not the right word. It's not liquid, but I forgot the word of it. But yeah, it's all healthy and safe and clean. And even when you decide to partake in menstrual clove for menstrual sex, you have to firstly have that conversation with your menstruating partner, just to see if you are both comfortable with the idea. Because one thing that I always realize is that everyone has a different relationship to their periods. And oftentimes there are menstruators who really just all they want to do is just sleep. and recover and rest and eat. And there are a few that will be like, no, on my third day, which is my light day, I can rock. Let's go. And the irony of it is that even on our periods, we are the most like horniest, if that's the right word. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yep.
the craziest thing. And so I always tell people, don't let your period stop you from partaking in that, right? There are different ways and methods in which you can still find it to be pleasurable. You can, do it in the shower, ensure that you have the right grip for that. If you want to do the couch, the bed, just make sure you put a towel.
Yeah, have a towel.
Make it to be intimate, like I won't even lie to you, the benefits of period sex are so great because you often will experience, not even often, you will experience a shorter period.
More of an emotional connection.
The period, that is, yes, very important. But I'm looking towards, like the benefit of the menstrual.
The physical benefits.
Physical benefits, all the symptoms that you have that often impact you negatively are often relieved purely because of the endorphins that you feel. A lot of people report that their flow is shorter.
You're saying orgasms feel good.
Mm-hmm. The cramps are not there. And so just research it, read people's own blogs and opinions of period sex, and then just also look at the methods of how people can still have a great time. And like you said, it really brings you more closer to your partner, and that is very intimate because you're bringing on flow into the situation. So, it's good. It's a good way.
Yeah, whenever you open up the relationship, it's, gets tricky. you start to, yeah, anyway, I don't know where I was going with that analogy.
I know, I knew where you're going.
Yeah. So my personal history with that is also, something that I'll explore on stage eventually. So I take it you're someone who was always kind of into public speaking and that sort of thing, or was this a late stage development?
Definitely very late stage. When I was in primary school, I was a very shy and quiet girl. I kept to myself a lot. I only discovered dramatic arts and public speaking in high school. I went from a public primary school to a private school, and with private school the classes are more smaller, so it means that teachers are able to spend more time with students individually. And I don't know. I didn't know what I was going to do with drama, but I think because I loved watching a lot of TV shows, and I loved watching Twilight, #Team Jacob. I felt that I could resonate with the emotions that were coming across on screen. I also really enjoyed going to theater, and I really loved just having that opportunity to see people be vulnerable and speak openly and share something. And I joined drama in grade 9. I also joined public speaking and debating.
I mean, that's relatively young. That's not that late.
Not that late, but I think considering that my primary school from grade 1 till about grade 7, I'd always just been the shy, quiet girl. It really was a defining moment of just my young adolescence life, because I never really discovered what my voice was. I never really discovered, I never gave myself the opportunity and the platform to just hear myself speak and be heard and validated in that. So those extramural activities and subjects really gave me that opportunity to be able to write my own opinions and facts, and then put it in a way that's so creative that I could perform it. And I really enjoyed that. And I took drama until matric, and I in particular loved doing a lot of feminist pieces and performing that and writing about my experiences as well. And that just really helped me fall in love with feminism and gender studies. I always thought that I wanted to be an actress, but I think there was something about writing, and there was something about wanting to change the status quo and advocating for that really made me want to do sort of social sciences at Wits. And I've always just enjoyed just that element of writing and then transforming it into something that's creative and something that people can relate with. So
we're going to get a period play sometime soon.
A period play.
Can even call it the period play.
It's all going to be. It's just going to be period products, just dancing. Just I don't know. I just want people period products to just twerk and stuff. Look, I think that would be a really cool. That would be a really cool thing to do. I haven't given myself creatively as much as I would because I think running an NGO and then
Yeah.
it'll take your time. But I think that's maybe what the season of my life is calling for, just to perhaps go back to the things that I initially fell in love with. And I guess that's why I decided to go back into writing my blog, because I've always had a blog since I was in grade 10 or 11. I've always written on these things, not in menstrual health in particular, but feminism and
Yeah.
things that made me angry as a young Black girl, and I think that's maybe what the season of my life is directing me to say, go back to those creative elements and then just link it to the work that you do. Maybe that's what it is. So perhaps a period play is coming soon. We shall see. But I've always just had a flair for wanting to get some people to just understand and empathize.
With the entertainment side of things, I have seen you've been working with comedians and you've been doing a pretty fun show up there. What's the vibe with that?
I mean, it's just men experiencing period pain and seeing whether they can be able to finish their set. Because, one of the issues around, period pain and the stigma that we often experience is that people think we're just being dramatic, or that, we just need to take a Panado and get over it with it. It's like, no, the period pain can impact you physically, beyond the physical, mentally and emotionally. And obviously with the device that I put on the male comedians, yes, the only thing that they're experiencing is the physical element of, I can't stand, I can't, how do I then speak? It's also just then having the confidence and the ability to do your job whilst experiencing this. And this is what we have to go through every single month. So the whole point of that collaboration was really just for the male comedians just to step into our shoes for 5 minutes. At least they had the option of knowing when to back away, but just being able to say, okay, for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to try and see if I can finish the set. And oftentimes, I think that what the funniest thing was, just as I was putting on the device on their lower abdomen, a lot of them be like, I can do this. I know my set. And as soon as they get on stage and they're on like level 25 or 40, they set is gone. They're just like, okay, I need to talk about this. We need to talk about this. We need to address this. Like, what you go through every single month. I think the funniest comedian, I forgot his name, but he's from Zimbabwe, and he was like, I'm sorry.
Q?
Sorry?
Q Dube?
Yes, Q. Said, he's like, I'm sorry, I'm going to apologize to all the Zimbabwean women in my life because they had to go through this whilst living through Mugabe's time. And I was like, you know what? Then the elevators, like Winnie Mandela had to go through this whilst fighting apartheid. I'm like, you know what? Yes.
That's actually a good campaign idea.
Honestly, and it just, I think it was really just great to see the physical manifestation of the inability to not do their job. That's something that always comes off as very easy. And I know comedy isn't easy. I know that sometimes you'll have a really good crowd and you have a really bad crowd. But now adding this other layer of, I'm being vulnerable and I'm experiencing this pain, and now I'm in front of a crowd of 100 people and I need to try and make them laugh whilst I'm literally like suffering. That was something that I think really resonated well with the comedians and the male audience members, because after the show, a lot of couples came and said, can my husband, my boyfriend try this out? And they were suffering as well. So I think, again, it's that element of being able to take the creative and drive a social message to say periods are normal, but intense period pains aren't. And what are we doing as a society to ensure that we don't have to live with this symptom anymore?
Yeah, I mean, like, on a small scale, I was just thinking of all the comedians who, have menstruates and then also are touring and like, are doing this thing, like not just for 5 minutes, for like an hour and at least a week, a month, like, it's up and down, like that, what they're dealing with.
Exactly.
So I think stuff like that really does help create empathy, I guess. And like, because as a man, you don't really know, you just don't. And it's also one of those things where, like with our, masculine ideas and stuff, you think, oh, I could handle that, no problem, like that is like the intrinsic first thoughts, I think.
Yeah.
And then seeing like, my friends busy doubling over in pain, I was like, okay, yeah, that
Yeah.
seems like it fucking sucks.
Yeah. No, it's real. And considering that if we say that people menstruate for an average of 40 years of their life, and then on top of like living with the period poverty and then the stigma, then also having to deal with these symptoms, it's a lot that we have to go through. And so, yeah, I hope people through my waffling, at least just understand that point of we're not just asking for menstrual leave as a way for us to just chill at home and just watch Netflix. We're saying that we want to be our best selves and be the best productive selves that we can be. But if we experience really intense period symptoms, that we work with companies or employers that understand that and are willing to establish period positive spaces in the workplace that allow us to either take off leave or give us the opportunity to work in a wellness room the whole day. Things like that. And I think, like I said, like
Or just
out
work from
the period,
home. But yeah.
yeah,
But
work at
also
home.
that just having to work when you're experiencing pain is just shit in general and shouldn't like be a solution.
Exactly. But depending on, I guess, the industry that you work in, right? So it's very difficult for you to work from home if you work in the retail space and you only get like maybe
Of
one day.
course.
Things like that. I think we have to be very mindful that not everyone has the ability to work in a corporate space. People work in different industries, especially I think the automotive industry is one where a lot of people who menstruate work in those spaces but are not given the spaces to just be able to change their pad without their pay being affected or go to the boss, things like that. There's a lot of
Fuck.
discrimination that comes with it. And that's why I say it's always so much deeper than just the access to the period products. It's the stigma that impacts how the policy is implemented. And if we're not educating people about the lived realities and the lived experiences, and we're not depicting that accurately on our TV screens, then it's always going to be this thing of our periods are just a happy time, or our periods are something that we don't speak openly about. And that's why we need to change the script. That's why we need to change the narrative to make sure that we are no longer living through these experiences.
Amen.
Amen. And that's on period.
Yeah, okay, so we're gonna get a little personal at the end here. Like, this has been a great chat, and I hope, yeah, like people have learned from it. So I think a lot of people already know. Like, I've got a decent, my demographics are pretty good. Like, it's not mostly men, but there's, for the men, I hope people have taken something away from this, and just in general, I hope people have learned a lot. But what is a big mistake that you have learned an important lesson from? This is a question I ask everyone at the end.
What's a big mistake? Wow. Sure. To never let my imposter syndrome win. There have literally been times when I have allowed for it to just take over every single thing that I say and do to the point that it really impacts the relationship that I have with myself and ultimately the relationship that I have with others. And so I think there was this time when, I overstepped on a campaign that I was working on where I was just like, okay, I know that this is the deliverables that I'm doing, and instead I'm going to do this. And I made a huge mess, and it just, oh, yeah. And it's because my imposter syndrome was like, you're not doing enough. You should do more. And yeah, I definitely did more in that regard. And it was something that I had to, put in a lot of work to just, yeah. So I think for me, I've always just allowed myself to listen to what my imposter syndrome voice has to say, because sometimes it can be a space of it's trying to protect me from something, and sometimes it can be it's just trying to be my worst enemy. Listen to what it has to say, try and find some validity in it, and then listen to what my heart and my gut are saying, especially when I'm making decisions, especially when I want to work with people, and trying not my best to like people please and trying to overcompensate and yeah, do the most. And so yeah, that for me has been the biggest mistake, letting my imposter syndrome win. And from now on, I'm just going to be like, okay, I'm going to give you this 2 minutes to say what you need to say, and then I'm going to keep it moving.
Yeah, I feel like I needed to hear that because, like, I deal with it as well, but in a different way. I do less, like, because I'm just like, oh, no one needs to hear this. No one cares, blah, 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 Like, I get in my own head about that shit a lot. So, But yeah, so I do it differently. I don't do more. I'm just like, well, fuck everything. And yeah, so
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that. I think it's also very important that we are having these conversations around menstrual health, right? Mental. I got confused
both.
there. Mental, both. Purely because I think, yeah, our parents weren't having these conversations. They were just told to keep it moving, figure it out,
Yeah, life's hard, that's it.
life's hard. You need to figure it out for your children, and that's pretty much it. And so I always appreciate being able to have these platforms in which I can speak openly about my lived experience and my continuous lived experience of how I'm navigating being a social entrepreneur and a thought leader and a this and this and this, and also just a Candice, how Candice navigates this role. Because it's tough. It's really tough. And so I think it's really important that people who are listening to this just also feel validated and that you're not the only one going through what you have to go through, but also giving yourself the space to deal with it. Because the more you just leave it under the rug, it'll get worse. It will implode. And it's better that we keep it moving, and we deal with it and we address it. We don't just say, oh, it'll sort itself out later. Nope. It'll bite you. And it won't be nice.
I feel you there. Well, cool. Thank you so much for this. This has been such a great chat. Like, I'm stoked. We met, I think, like was it Wayleen's comedy gig?
Yes.
I was with Mojak, and like I knew then, like when you introduced yourself as the Minister of Menstruation, I was like, I think this is someone I'm going to get on the podcast at some point. So I'm really stoked.
And I still have my almost perfect sticker, which is great. I've got it on my laptop.
Oh, fuck yeah. Awesome. Yeah, send me a photo. Like I love that shit. Like that makes me so fucking happy. Like you don't even know. Like I love seeing my stickers out in the world, and yeah, it feels good. So
no, you did
awesome.
good.
Thank you.
I'm affirming.
As are you. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that was Candice. How dope is she? Like for real, like just man, I'm really stoked we got to do that, and I'm really stoked that she's doing the work that she's doing, and that we're getting to have these kind of conversations and normalizing these things that there are stigma around. I mean, I just know growing up, like into my 20s even, though just the period stuff was weird. Like, there wasn't enough real education, at least for me, I guess, and I didn't really have a proper understanding of it. And thankfully, as I've gotten older, through the media and through, well, not the media, but through some aspects of media, the various areas of YouTube and whatever, and yeah, because of the work of people like Candice, I've at least learned a bit more. And even after this, I've learned a lot more. And I imagine as I continue to follow Candice online, I'm going to keep learning. So yeah, thank you to Candice for her time. And there might be a possibility that you might be seeing me with that machine strapped around me trying to do comedy at some point. I have thrown it out there to Candice that maybe we could do one of those gigs here in Durban. So we'll see how that goes. And speaking of comedy in Durban, I am just going to remind you, every Wednesday, not quite right, open mic, Ace's Pizza, 7 p.m, 30 Rand. And if you don't know where Ace's Pizza is, it's 247 Windermere Road. Just hoot when you get to the gates. We'll open up for you. There's a decent amount of parking inside. So come on down. Because yeah, it's actually been really cool just to see the gig steadily grow. Bit by bit. Couple more people each week in the audience. Even more comedians each week. And yeah, we're at that point now where like, we had an awkward fucking moment or vibe or whatever on this Wednesday, because one of the guys came through like quite late, like after 8 o'clock, didn't say hello to me or Liam, who are the people behind the gig, and then just went and chatted to the host to try and get on. And I'd already said in like our little WhatsApp group, like no more people jumping on, because the lineup was fucking long. I think we had like 9 or 10 comedians on, which is just too many. There's too much tuna. And I think, yeah, we're going to cap it at 8 or 9, like going forward, like with the headliner at the end, plus the host and that, it's like you're looking at basically like a 2-hour show, which can get exhausting and it can put the final act in a shitty position. And usually the headline is meant to be, the best act, but then you have, or at least the person doing the best set, because the other sets are all 5 minutes. They're meant to be new material. A lot of people, feel the need to kill to a crowd of 10 people instead of actually working on their shit. So they do old material, and that's annoying, but whatever. People will get out of this gig what they put into it, basically. And yeah, if you show up halfway through the fucking gig, you don't even greet the people putting on the gig, and then you expect to get on, that's not going to happen. That's, to me, very, very fucking disrespectful. And I just think there are certain people in comedy, especially in Durban, who have a sense of entitlement, man. And you are not entitled to our stage. That's, that's the reality. We're the ones who get there early every single fucking week. We set everything up. We set up the stage. We literally build the stage every week. We put up the speaker. We set up the sound. We set up the lights. We set up the tables, the chairs, everything. Every single week. That's us putting in the work so that other people can come and utilize the platform. Obviously, it helps us, because we're doing this so that we can build, so that we can get better, so that we have a, repeated gig where we can actually learn and get better at this thing. So personally, to me, I'm just gonna, I set the rules there. I even called everyone after the gig and was just like, this is it. You get you between 7 and 7:30. You accept that you might not actually get a slot. And the people who are cool, we'll keep working with. If you take offense to that, if you think it's a personal thing or whatever, cool, you don't have to come. It's fine. We've got other people we can just work with. So while I hope that comedian does come back and they come early and, be a part of the vibe, I'm also not too stressed if they don't. They've got their own gigs anyway, so, they can live their lives. But if they want to be a part of our vibe, you get there early and, you help promote the show. You bring people to the show. You show that you fucking care. Because as I say, we're the ones putting in the work, and we don't need to necessarily just reward people who show up in the middle of the fucking show and don't even fucking greet us. So, yeah, I don't know. That felt a little pointed, didn't it? And the person I'm talking about isn't going to listen to this. And even if they did, they would probably take more offense. So, whatever, man. I'm just letting it go now. But maybe that's the thing for you. If you want to get into comedy, or even just in any fucking, entertainment space or whatever, don't act like a fucking rock star. Just don't. Just be cool. I'm early to every gig I'm on. Every single fucking gig. I'm always early. And if not, to always communicate with the promoters to let them know, hey, I'm running late or whatever. I'll see you after this gig or whatever. So, and I've been bumped from gigs I was actually on the lineup for because other comedians pulled through. You're not guaranteed stage time, people. You're not owed stage time. Just be fucking cool and be humble. And with that out the way, it is time to give the shout-outs. Now, if you don't know, each week on this podcast, we give shout-outs to the titular titles tier over at patreon.com/almostperfect. This is a top tier, it's a $10 tier, other alliteration, etc. So, shout-out to Rousseau, the storage clerk of subtle heresies in the Lesser Overberg region. Russell Grant, the Far East correspondent. Neil Green, the key grip. Karan Sleman, the almost perfect hedge fund manager. Rose Ventura, the Director of Purchasing, Karan Chetty, the Assistant to the Regional Manager, Kath Jenkin, the Inevitable Ruler of the Universe, and Queen Swifty, and then Stephen Olivier, the Executive Producer. Of course, I want to give a big thank you to Damien Ruitt for providing the bed music you hear underneath the dulcet tones, and the banging intro you hear at the beginning of each episode. And of course, shoutouts to you. I'll catch you on the flip side.